Today we will start the crown rule in India after the War of Independence in 1857. The thin line between the company rule and the crown rule is the independence of Indian War of Independence, which is happened in 1857. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858, अगर हम लोग गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 की बात करें तो इसे हम लोग चार ग्राउंड पे बात करेंगे. ऑल्सो नॉन एज, मतलब इसे और किस नाम से जाना जाता है? ऑल्सो नॉन एज, AKA का फुल फॉर्म ऑल्सो नॉन एज होता है. नेक्स्ट है इंट्रोडक्शन, इसके बारे में जानेंगे. फिर इसका बैकग्राउंड, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 का बैकग्राउंड क्या था, इसमें कुछ कुछ प्रोविजंस क्या थे और फिर ड्रॉबैक्स क्या थे जो कि और भी आगे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट को लाया गया फर्दर. अगर ये परिपूर्ण होता, ये कंप्लीट होता तो डेफिनेटली हम लोग नहीं लाते. तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 की अगर हम लोग बात करें तो दिस इज ऑल्सो नॉन एज एन एक्ट फॉर द बेटर गवर्नेंस ऑफ इंडिया, द प्रोक्लेमेशन लेटर ऑफ क्वीन विक्टोरिया एंड द मैग्ना कार्टा of the people in India, as it declared the future policy of British rule in India. Magna Carta, future policy of British rule in India. So the Government of India Act 1858 is also known as an act of the better governance of India, the proclamation letter of Queen Victoria, Magna Carta of the people of India, as it declared the future policy of the British rule in India. So the Government of India Act 1858 is known by the three names. The first name is the an act of better governance of India, next the proclamation of the Queen Victoria and the Magna Carta of the people, which declares the future policy of the British rule in India. This is the Government of India Act 1858. Then introduction, if we will talk about the introduction, it is transferred the government and territories of the East India Company to the British Crown. The Government of India Act 1858 transferred the government and territories of the East India Company to the British Crown. Also, the Queen Victoria became the sovereign of British territories in India, sovereign in with the title of Empress of India. Next background की अगर हम लोग बात करें, if we will talk about the background, there are the revolt of 1857 served as a jolt to the British government and company's policy were blamed, completely blamed कर दिया गया था 1857 में. पूरा रिवॉल्ट हो रहा था 1857 में, ये इसका बैकग्राउंड है, इसलिए लाया गया था. इसके बाद इसके कुछ कुछ प्रोविजन की अगर हम लोग बात करें तो पहला प्रोविजन है एबॉलिशन ऑफ कंपनी रूल. कंपनी रूल को एबॉलिश कर दिया गया. ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी वाज लिक्विडेटेड. इंडियन टेरिटरीज ऑफ ब्रिटेन वेयर टू बी गवर्न इन द नेम ऑफ द ब्रिटिश क्वीन, मेड इंडिया अ डायरेक्ट ब्रिटिश कॉलोनी. Abolished, abolition of company rule abolish हो गया. Abolished the dual government of the Pitt's India Act. Pitt's India Act में dual government जो था, कोर्ट ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स और बोर्ड ऑफ कंट्रोल, दोनों को abolished कर दिया गया. नेक्स्ट established प्रोविजन, established जो हुआ था लॉर्ड स्टैनले, जो कि सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट थे. अब देखिए यहाँ पे सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट के बारे में हम लोग कुछ जानकारी देखेंगे, जो कि लॉर्ड स्टैनले थे. स्टेट ऑफ सेक्रेटरी होता था एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव अथॉरिटी. इसकी एलिजिबिलिटी होती थी ब्रिटिश का MP होता था, मेंबर ऑफ प्राइम मिनिस्टर कैबिनेट, असिस्टेड बाय एडवाइजरी काउंसिल, 15 मेंबर एंड 1 चेयरमैन, ठीक है, बाय द एडवाइजरी काउंसिल. लिमिटेशंस, इफ यू विल टॉक अबाउट लिमिटेशन, कैपेबल ऑफ स्विंग and being sued in India and the England. This is the limitation of the Secretary of State. The function of the Secretary of the power of the Court of Directors, channel of communication between the British government in Britain and the Indian administration in India. Next, the function of Secretary of State is power to send secret dispatches to India without consulting his council. This is the function. Power of Court of Directors, channel of communication between Britain and the India administration, and the power to send the secret dispatch to India without consulting his council. This is the function of Secretary of State. The first Secretary of State was Lord Stanley. Okay, then गवर्नर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया, इसके प्रोविजन थे, इस्टेब्लिशमेंट क्या, सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट का इस्टेब्लिशमेंट हुआ. फिर गवर्नर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया, गवर्नमेंट जनरल ऑफ इंडिया बिकेम द लॉर्ड कैनिंग वाइसराय. गवर्नर जनरल ऑफ इंडिया पहले था, उसको हटा के या उसको चेंज करके बना दिया गया वाइसराय, जो कि पहला था लॉर्ड कैनिंग. लॉर्ड कैनिंग. और इसका जो इंट्रोडक्शन था, रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट इन इंडिया रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट एंड अपॉइंटेड बाय द क्राउन, who also appoints governor of the various presidencies to be assisted with an executive council. To be assisted with an executive council. Next है इंडियन सिविल सर्विसेज. इसी के तहत लाएगा टू बी इंस्टीट्यूटेड टू असिस्ट द स्मूथ फंक्शनिंग ऑफ द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ द कंट्री अंडर द कंट्रोल ऑफ सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट. इंडियन ऑल्सो टू बी एडमिटेड. इंडियन सिविल सर्विसेज एक्ट. नेक्स्ट है पॉलिसी ऑफ सबऑर्डिनेट यूनियन. abandon the doctrine of lapse annexation policy of Lord Dalhousie. Abandon the doctrine of lapse annexation of policy of the Lord Dalhousie. Adopted the policy of subordinate union towards the Indian princely state. Towards the Indian princely state. There would be no extension to the territorial position in India. British promised to respect the dignity and rights of the native princes. All the treaties and the agreement made with the Indian native princes under the East India Company authority did not cease to exist, but were there to stay and accepted by the crown. Remaining Indian princes and the chief, more than the 560 in number, would have their independent status provided they accept British suzerainty. Would have their independent status. Total freedom of religion to the people of India without interference from the British official, and granted amnesty to all except for those who were charged with the murder of the British subject. Next, drawbacks. If we will talk about the drawbacks, dominated by the absolute imperial control with no representation for the people of India, Secretary of State, supreme authority and had a free hand in the administration of India, responsible only to the British Parliament. This is the Government of India Act 1858. After the Government of India Act 1858, we overcome the Government of India Act 1858 with the drawbacks of dominated by the absolute imperial control and the Secretary of State. We come with a Indian Council Act 1861. Here we also discuss about the four major headings or the subtopic. First is the background of the Indian Council Act 1861. Second is the provision of Indian Council Act 1861. Third is the legacy of Indian Council Act 1861, and the fourth one is the drawbacks of the Indian Council Act. Background. If we will talk about the background, there are the four major headings. First is the Government of India Act 1858. बैकग्राउंड था सिपाही म्यूटिनी 1857, चार्टर एक्ट 1833 एंड गवर्नर जनरल इन काउंसिल, ये बैकग्राउंड थे इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1861 को लाने के लिए. गवर्नर ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट ऑफ द 1858 मेड इंपॉर्टेंट चेंजेस in the manner of governance from England, made no significant changes to the Indian government system. यहाँ पे आप कंपेरेटिव स्टडी अगर करें तो यहाँ पे क्या है कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 में दो मेजर चेंजेस किए गए थे. पहला था कि गवर्नेंस फ्रॉम इंग्लैंड, लेकिन इंडिया के गवर्नेंस सिस्टम पे कोई सिग्निफिकेंट चेंजेस नहीं किए गए थे. एंड टू द इंडिया, ये जो था इंडियन गवर्नमेंट सिस्टम को कुछ भी चेंज नहीं किया गया था. So this is the first background of the Indian Council Act 1861. Second is Sepoy Mutiny 1857. Government in India without the participation of Indian in the administration. Government in India without the participation of Indians in the administration is extremely impossible. Next, Charter Act 1833 का centralize the legislative process. Only one representative in each of the four provinces. Only one representative. Governor General in Council, due to the lengthy procedure that caused delay in the enactment, failing in his legislative duties and unable to perform effectively. This is the four major background. तो पहला था गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 में क्या गया था कि इंडिया के जो सिस्टम थे उसमें कुछ सिग्निफिकेंट चेंजेस नहीं लाए गए थे, जबकि कंप्लीट इंग्लैंड को सारा रूल रेगुलेशन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में लगा दिया गया था. ये गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 का मेजर चेंजेस था. सिपाही म्यूटिनी 1857 में हुई थी, जिसके बाद इंडिया का इसमें एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का पार्टिसिपेशन नहीं था, इसीलिए ये हुआ था, जो कि बहुत ही इम्पॉसिबल था. चार्टर एक्ट 1833 में सेंट्रलाइज द लेजिस्लेटिव प्रोसेस. Only one representative in each of the four provinces. Governor General in Council, due to the lengthy procedure that caused delay in enactment, falling in his legislative duties, unable to perform effectively. Then the Indian Council Act 1861 provision. If we will deal with the provision, the first is the Central Executive Council, second is Central Legislative Council, third is the Provincial Legislative Council, Portfolio System और the Governor General. प्रोविजन इसमें क्या क्या लाए गए थे? पहला जो प्रोविजन था 1861 का सेंट्रल एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल, यहाँ से सेंट्रलाइजेशन का प्रोसेस चालू हुआ था. दैट इज द काउंसिल इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1861. सेंट्रल एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल, सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल एंड प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल. पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम, गवर्नर जनरल. तो प्रोविजंस में चार मेन प्रोविजंस थे. पहला प्रोविजन था सेंट्रल एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल, सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल एंड द प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल. फिर था पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम और लास्ट था गवर्नर जनरल. अब हम लोग पढ़ेंगे सेंट्रल एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल के तहत क्या था कि अ फिफ्थ मेंबर वाज एडेड. ठीक है, a fifth member was added. Now there were 5 members for the home, military, law, revenue and finance. 5 members. होम के लिए अलग था, मिलिट्री के लिए अलग था, लॉ के लिए अलग था, रेवेन्यू के लिए अलग था, फाइनेंस के लिए अलग था. ठीक है. A sixth member for public works was added in 1874. A sixth member for public works was added in 1874. Central Legislative Council. Central Legislative Council 6 to 12 additional members nominated by the Governor General, 2 years tenure. First time Indian appointed in the Legislative Council. 1 by 2 members is equal to non-official Indian British. Any bill related to public revenue or debt, military, religion, foreign affairs could not be passed without the Governor General accent. Accent लेना important था. Governor General power to overrule the council if necessary. Secretary of State for India in the Britain could also dissolve any act passed by the council. Secretary of State for India in Britain, ये ब्रिटेन में बैठे हुए होते थे. तो सेंट्रल एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल और सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल, इसमें क्या था कि एक फिफ्थ मेंबर फाइनेंस जोड़ा गया था सेंट्रल एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल में. सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल में 6 to 12 एडिशनल मेंबर को ऐड किए गए थे, नॉमिनेटेड बाय द गवर्नर जनरल. 2 years ऑफ टेन्योर हुआ करता था. फर्स्ट टाइम इंडियन अपॉइंटेड इन द लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल. 1 by 2 members और द नॉन ऑफिशियल हुआ था. फर्स्ट टाइम इंडियन अपॉइंटेड इन द लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल. एनी बिल रिलेटेड टू public revenue, military, religion, foreign affairs could not be passed without the accent of Governor General. This is the Governor General का ये था मैन. Power to overrule the council if necessary. Secretary of State for the Britain in India can also have the rights. Secretary of State in Britain. This is the Central Legislative Council. Then the Provincial Council restored legislative power of presidencies. New provinces could also be created for the legislative purpose, and the lieutenant governor can be appointed for new provinces. Established किया गया था legislative councils का in province में. 1862 बंगाल में, 1866 नॉर्थ वेस्ट फ्रंटियर प्रोविंस एंड द 1897 पंजाब एंड बर्मा, ये प्रोविंस स्टार्ट किए गए थे. ठीक है, दिस इज द मेन थिंग. नेक्स्ट है पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम. पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम, मेंबर ऑफ द एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल इन चार्ज ऑफ 1 or more डिपार्टमेंट. लाइक डिपार्टमेंट कौन कौन से थे? प्रेजेंट कैबिनेट. ठीक है, पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम लाया गया था. मेंबर्स इन चार्ज ऑफ द 1 more डिपार्टमेंट. दिस इज द पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम. और हम लोग आगे पोर्टफोलियो सिस्टम जो था वो लॉर्ड कैनिंग के द्वारा लाया गया था इन द इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1861, which is the first Indian Council Act. Governor General can issue the ordinance during emergency and valid for the 6 month. सेम ही रह गया. गवर्नर जनरल जो लॉर्ड कैनिंग था उसका जो था ऑर्डिनेंस इशू करने का ड्यूरिंग इमरजेंसी कैन एंड वैलिड अप टू द 6 months. नेक्स्ट लीगेसी. फर्स्ट टाइम इंडियन appointed in legislative council. Why in legislative? Because of Sepoy mutiny in 1857. legislative council में इसे appoint किया गया फर्स्ट टाइम. नेक्स्ट है लीगेसी में लैंडमार्क इन द इवोल्यूशन ऑफ constitution and polity. Landmark evolution of constitution and polity. Decentralization of administration. अब आते हैं हम लोग लास्ट लीगेसी के बाद ड्रॉबैक्स में. इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1861 का क्या क्या ड्रॉबैक्स रहा? लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल हैड लिमिटेड रोल, chiefly advisory, no decision, no finance was permitted. legislative council में इंडिया को रखा गया था इसलिए. even though Indian were nominated, there was no statutory provision for the inclusion of Indians in it. इंडियन नॉमिनेट किए जाते थे. पावर ऑफ ऑर्डिनेंस गिवन टू द गवर्नर जनरल gave him absolute power. This is the Indian Council Act 1861. As we know that there are some drawbacks in the Indian Council Act 1861, which is the first is the Legislative Council has limited role, chiefly advisory, no discussion on finance was permitted. Legislative Council drawbacks ये थे. Even though Indians were nominated, there was no statutory provision for the inclusion of Indian in it. Power of ordinance given to the Governor General of Bengal gave him absolute power. This is the drawbacks. That's why the Indian Council Act comes with some new provisions and drawbacks and criticism. The first is legacy and provision. In the Indian Council Act, legacy and provisions. If we will talk about the legacy, it started the nomination, indirect election in Central Legislative Council and Provincial Legislative Council में indirect election nomination. ठीक है, ये legacy थी इसके. प्रोविजन क्या था? सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल का एस्टेब्लिश किया था. नॉन ऑफिशियल मेंबर, ऑफिशियल मेंबर और एम्पावर्ड मेंबर. नॉन ऑफिशियल मेंबर में इंक्रीज कर दिया था और नॉमिनेटेड बाय द वाइसराय था. नॉमिनेटेड बाय वाइसराय. कंसल्ट प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल, बंगाल चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स. बंगाल चैम्बर कंसल्टेड दिस. ओके. So non-official member nominated by Viceroy. Official member in the Central Legislative Council is elected by the majority. Empowered Legislative Council discuss and the question. Discuss budget, question, executive. Next, Provincial Legislative Council. Non-official member nominated by the governor and consulted with the district board, municipality, universities, trade association, jamindar and chambers. Consult with ये nominated by governor, non-official member. So this is the Indian Council Act 1892. लीगेसी इसका याद रखना है. लीगेसी क्या था? इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन इन इंडिया. इनडायरेक्ट इलेक्शन इन द सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल एंड द प्रोविंशियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल. After this, we will talk about the Indian Council Act 1909. In this, we will deal with the three major headings. First is also known as, second is legacy, third is the provisions. The Indian Council Act 1909 is also known as the Minto-Morley reforms. Minto-Morley reforms. Minto is the viceroy and the father of communal electorate. Morley was the secretary of state. इसलिए इसे मिंटो मॉर्ले रिफॉर्म्स कहा गया. लीगेसी, कॉमर्शियल इलेक्टोरेट, कम्युनल इलेक्टोरेट. इंडियन काउंसिल एक्ट 1909. प्रोविजंस, लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल, एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल और सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट. तो लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल में इंक्रीज कर दिया गया था मेंबर्स इन सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल एंड द प्रोविंशियल काउंसिल. सेंट्रल में मेजोरिटी बाय द ऑफिशियल से रिक्रूट होते थे और प्रोविंशियल अलाउड नॉन ऑफिशियल मेंबर मेजोरिटी बाय मेजोरिटी. ठीक है. empowered, legislative council is empowered, move the resolution of the budget. empowered 1909 में बजट डिस्कस कर सकते थे. सप्लीमेंट्री क्वेश्चन ऑल्सो कैन दे आस्क एंड एटसेट्रा, empowered किया गया था. They can also discuss the budget in Legislative Council in the by the Government India Act 1909. Executive Council Indian appointed. Executive Council में भी इंडिया को अपॉइंट किया गया. Separate electorate Hindu and Muslim. Separate electorate. Minto-Morley reform. Separate electorate. Communal electorate. These are the Indian Council Act 1909. Then after this, in 1916 there was the Lucknow Pact is signed. How? ये कैसे आया लखनऊ पैक्ट? By the Annie Besant. By the Annie Besant, इसके एफर्ट से आया लखनऊ पैक्ट. इसका जो सिग्निफिकेंस था, वो पहला सिग्निफिकेंस था, इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस एंड मुस्लिम लीग कैम टुगेदर, मॉडरेट एंड एक्सट्रीमिस्ट कैम टुगेदर, गांधी इमर्ज्ड एज द नेशनल लीडर इन द लखनऊ पैक्ट. आउटकम्स क्या थे इसके? सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट फॉर ऑल कम्युनिटीज until a community demanded joint electorate. Muslim will get 1/3 reservation in central government. A system of minority political representation. All members except nominated should be elected on adult franchises. Executive should be separated from the judiciary. This is in the Lucknow Pact. Executive should be separated from judiciary and communal veto in legislature. Communal veto in the legislature. This is the outcomes. This is the Lucknow Pact in the 1916. Lucknow Pact 1916. इसका significance क्या था कि moderate extremist came together and Gandhi ji emerged as a national leader. Separate electorate for all community. Muslim will get reservation in central system of minority political representation. All members except nominated should be elected on adult franchise. Executives should be separated from the communal veto in legislature. Now, Government of India Act 1919, also known as the Government of India Act 1919. Also known as the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Montagu is the Secretary of State and Chelmsford is the Viceroy. So this is the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Montagu is the Secretary of State and Chelmsford is the Viceroy, and it is also known as the Montagu-Chelmsford reform. So Government of India Act 1909 is the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. Legacy: first step toward the federal government, which is the responsible government. First step toward the federal government. Then the provision. Provision is the separate subjects. Separate subjects. Why? Because we have to make laws. Separate subject to make law. Separate subject क्या थे? Central list, provincial list. Provincial list में क्या था? Further divided into, it is called the diarchy or the double rule. Further divided into provincial list, it is diarchy rules unsuccessful, which is unsuccessful. Central list and the provincial list. Separate subject. Central Council, Central Legislative Council became the bicameral legislature. Upper house and the lower house. Upper house is the Council of State and the lower house is the Legislative Assembly. Central Legislative Council become bicameral. Bicameral is upper house and the lower house. This is happens in which council? Indian Government of India Act 1919. Government of India Act 1909. नेक्स्ट सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट. इससे पहले एग्जीक्यूटिव काउंसिल 3/4 Indians, 3/4 Indians, separate electorate, 6 Anglo-Indians, Indian Christian and European, Sai, Sikh, Anglo-Indian, Indian Christian and European. Next, voting rights based on the property tax and education, based on the property tax and the education. Established the Central Public Commission to appoint civil servant. सेपरेटेड बजट, सेंट्रल एंड द प्रोविंशियल के बजट को सेपरेट कर दिया गया गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 19 में. रिपोर्ट वर्किंग आफ्टर 10 years एंड रिपोर्ट वर्किंग बाय स्टैट्यूटरी कमीशन एंड दैट कमीशन इज साइमन कमीशन 1927. So this is the major provision of Government of India Act 1919. The Government of India Act 1919, we will study about the history from the 1927 to 32. 1927 means Simon Commission is established. 1928 is the Nehru Report. Then 1930, that is the first round table conference. Second, in the 1931 there is the second round table conference and Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Then the third round table conference in 32 and then the communal award. So first we will talk about the Simon Commission 1927. The chairman of Simon Commission of 1927 is Sir John Simon. Then there are reports which is submitted in 1930. The report of Simon Commission is submitted in 1930, and what was report? Diarchy abolished it. Communal electorate continued. All India Federation, responsible government, extended it to provinces. Governor act with the advice of minister. This is the responsible government. Next, anti-Simon. Why anti-Simon? Because all the members are Englishmen. Violation the self-determination and insult the self-respect of Indians. That's why this is the anti-Simon Commission. Next, significance with certain changes introduced in Government of India Act 1935. With Government of India Act 1935. Next, if we will go further, we will see the Nehru Report, which is given in 1928. In the Nehru Report, first we have to know about what is Nehru Report, who prepared the Nehru Report, then what are the features of Nehru Report, then what is Jinnah's 14 point, and then why Jinnah's 14 point come and what is the Jinnah's point. Is कांग्रेस एक्सेप्ट और रिजेक्ट? ठीक है, तो अगर हम लोग बात करें नेहरू रिपोर्ट 1928 की, तो दिस इज द मेमोरेंडम आउटलाइनिंग अ प्रपोज्ड न्यू डोमिनियन स्टेटस फॉर द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया. दिस इज द नेहरू रिपोर्ट ऑफ 1928. नेक्स्ट, हु प्रिपेयर्ड द नेहरू रिपोर्ट 1928? इट वाज प्रिपेयर्ड बाय द कमिटी ऑफ ऑल द पार्टीज कॉन्फ्रेंस, and chairman was the Motilal Nehru and the secretary is the Jawaharlal Nehru. Jawaharlal Nehru is the son of the Motilal Nehru. Next, what are the features? The first feature is India would be given dominion status, independence with British Commonwealth. India will be a federation, bicameral legislature at center. Executive would be responsible to legislature. Next, the Viceroy, constitutional head of India, same power as the British Crown. No separate electorate. Reversal of Lucknow Pact. Reversal of Lucknow Pact. इसके थ्रू रिवर्सल ऑफ लखनऊ पैक्ट हुआ था. Next, reservation for Muslim only in provinces where they were in the minority. Reversal of Lucknow Pact 19 define the citizenship, define the fundamental rights. Next is the Jinnah's 14 point. Jinnah's 14 point, why it is come in all the parties meeting at Calcutta in December 1928. Jinnah moved certain amendment to the Nehru report. A few days later, there was a Muslim all-parties conference was held in Delhi, in which the nationalist Muslim attended and formulated a series of demands on behalf of the Muslim of the country. In this all-Muslim parties conference, it was made clear that no constitution by whomsoever proposed or devised would be acceptable to the Muslim of a country unless it is conformed with those demands. At the same time, Jinnah, after consulting the Muslim leaders, formulated the 14 point for safeguard the rights and interests of Muslim in any future constitution of the country. Next, what is the Jinnah's 14 point? ठीक है, जिन्ना के 14 point क्या थे? The form of the future constitution should be federal, with the residuary power vested in the provinces. The form of future constitution should be federal, with the residuary power vested in provinces. A uniform measure of autonomy shall be granted to all the provinces. All legislature in the country and other elected bodies shall be constituted on the definite principle of adequate and effective representation of minority in every province without reducing the minority in any province to a minority or even the equality. In the central legislature, Muslim representation shall not be less than 1/3. Representation of communal groups shall continue to be by means of separate electorate as at the present, provided it shall be open to any community at any time to abandon its separate electorate in favor of a joint electorate. Any territorial distribution that might at any time be necessary shall not in any way affect the Muslim majority. Okay. Next, full religious liberty, that is the liberty of belief, worship and over observance, propaganda, association and education shall be will be granted to all community. Full religious liberty. Next, no bill or resolution or any part here shall be passed in any legislature or any other elected body if 3/4 of the member of any community in that particular body opposes it, being injurious to the interest of or in alternative such other method is devised as may be found the feasible as practicable to the deal with such cases. Sindh should be separated from the Bombay Residency. Reform should be introduced in the northwest frontier province and the Baluchistan on the same footing as in the other provinces. Provisions should be made in the constitution giving Muslim an adequate share along with the other Indian in all the services of the state and in the local self-governing bodies, having due regard to the requirement of efficiency. The constitution should embody adequate safeguard for the protection of Muslim culture and for the protection and promotion of Muslim education, language, religion, personal laws and the Muslim charitable institution, and for their due share in grants in aid given by the state and by the local self-governing bodies. No cabinet, either central or provincial, should be formed without there being a proportion of at least 1/3 Muslim ministers. No change shall be made in the constitution by the central legislature except with the concurrence of the state constituting the Indian Federation, but the Congress did not accept it. There are the 14 points. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. No change shall be made in the constitution by the central legislature except with the concurrence of the state Indian Federation. So these are the Jinnah's 14 points. In the all parties Calcutta in this one, Jinnah moved certain amendment to the Nehru report. This is the Jinnah's 14 point. Okay. This is the Jinnah's 14 point. Next, we will come to the first round table conference in 1930, where why and Congress did not participate और उसमें डिसीजंस क्या लिए गए, ये चीज हमें जानना है. कहां पे हुआ था फर्स्ट राउंड टेबल कॉन्फ्रेंस? इट इज इन एट लंदन. व्हाई इट? फॉर द डिस्कशन ऑफ एडवांसमेंट इन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन और कंसीडर साइमन प्रपोजल्स. Congress did not participate. Decision: All India Federation, British provinces plus princely state which agreed to join the federation. All India Federation. ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट आया था फर्स्ट राउंड टेबल. और क्या था? एग्जीक्यूटिव रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू लेजिस्लेटर. एग्जीक्यूटिव रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू लेजिस्लेचर एट सेंटर. executive responsible to legislator at center, subject to safeguards. Full responsibility of government in provinces. ठीक है, these are the decisions of this. Congress did not participate. Next, Gandhi-Irwin Pact 1931. Discontinuation of civil disobedient movement. Congress agreed to participate in second round table conference. Ordinance promulgated in wake of the CDM would be withdrawn. All those prisoners of CDM not charged with violence would be released. Permit to some people living at the sea coast to collect duty free salt, and the people can pick the liquor shop peacefully. This is a discontinuation of a disobedient movement. Congress agreed to participate in the second round table conference. Ordinance promulgated in the wake of the CDM would be withdrawn. All those prisoners of CDM not charged with violence would be released. Permit to some people living at the sea coast to collect duty free salt. People can fit in this. This is the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Next, second round table conference 1931. Congress under Gandhi participated. Okay, Congress under this participated. Nothing was decided as various communities in India did not come to understand regarding the seats distribution as the communal basis in the provincial and the central legislature. The matter was left to the final arbitration of Ramsay MacDonald decided. Gandhi returned and continued CDM and got jailed. The matter was left to the final arbitrator of the Ramsay MacDonald decided. Communal representation in provinces, creation of female electorate, northwest frontier provinces into status of governor provinces, and separation of Burma. This is the second round table conference. Gandhiji returned and continued. Consultative committees such as the Percy, Lothian and the Davidson committee to fill the gaps left out. Next, this is the third round table conference 1932. Where, why, representative and significance. Where कहाँ पे हुआ था? लंदन में. अगेन लंदन में. इसका टू कंसिडर रिपोर्ट ऑफ द कंसुलेटिव कमिटी. रिप्रेजेंटेटिव कौन कौन थे इसमें? ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट, ब्रिटिश इंडिया, प्रिंसली स्टेट, विदाउट कांग्रेस. इसमें कांग्रेस नहीं था थर्ड राउंड टेबल कॉन्फ्रेंस में. सिग्निफिकेंस इसका क्या था? सिग्निफिकेंस था अंबेडकर प्रपोजल. अंबेडकर प्रपोजल क्या क्या थे? यहाँ पे हम लोग देखते हैं. कम्युनल अवार्ड इज द अंबेडकर प्रपोजल. नेक्स्ट, कम्युनल अवार्ड. व्हाट इज द कम्युनल अवार्ड? Ramsay MacDonald announced the communal award. Communal award was awarded due to the repeated failure of community to decide on proportion of representative seat distributed under general Hindu, depressed classes, backward classes, Sikh, Muslim, Indian, Christian, Anglo-Indian, European, commerce and industry, landholder, universities and labor. depressed classes can vote in both general and special seats for a period of 20 years. Pune Pact 1932 modified the above stipulation, provided for the absorption of some special seat into general seat to be filled through the electoral college. ठीक है, ये चीज था सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट डिप्रेस्ड क्लासेस SC ST के लिए। ये था कम्युनल अवार्ड। कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस क्या थे? गांधी जी फास्ट अनटू डेथ, पूना पैक्ट हुआ, एग्रीमेंट था ये बिटवीन कांग्रेस एंड डिप्रेस्ड क्लासेस कि रिजर्वेशन डिप्रेस्ड क्लासेस इन द हिंदू ज्वाइंट इलेक्टोरेट, उसी में कर दिया जाएगा। ये था गवर्नर एक्ट विद द एडवाइस ऑफ मिनिस्टर, ये था कम्युनल अवार्ड। In this way we concluded the communal award. Next we will talk about the Government of India Act 1935. Legacy क्या थे और provisions क्या थे? Legacy थी completely responsible government and constitution lengthy and detailed किया गया। Complete क्या था? Decentralization, ठीक है, complete decentralization किया गया। पहले centralization था, कंप्लीट डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन किया गया। नेक्स्ट प्रोविजंस क्या क्या थे? सबसे पहला ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन विच इज अनसक्सेसफुल, कंसिस्ट ऑफ ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन में जो था प्रोविंसेस एंड प्रिंसली स्टेट। पावर्स किसके किसके पास थे? फेडरल लिस्ट, प्रोविंशियल लिस्ट एंड कंकरेंट लिस्ट। रेसिडुअल पावर, स्पेशल पावर, रेसिडुअल पावर मतलब स्पेशल पावर 2 किसके पास था? वाइसराय। एंड व्हाट आर दोज? डिफेंस एंड फॉरेन अफेयर्स, जो कि पूरी तरह से ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन वाला जो कॉन्सेप्ट था वो अनसक्सेसफुल हो गया। नेक्स्ट बाय कैमरलिज्म फॉर 6/11 प्रोविंसेस। व्हाट इज द बाय कैमरलिज्म? लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल एंड द लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबली, legislative council and legislative assembly, this is a bicameralism. Diarchy in provinces replaced with provincial autonomy. Ministers and governors, minister controls all depth provincial administration and governor स्पेशल पावर था उसके पास वीटो करने का, ठीक है। लेजिस्लेचर ऑन वन, फुल कंट्रोल, सिविल सर्विसेज एंड पुलिस, डायरची इन प्रोविंसेस। नेक्स्ट था डायरची इंट्रोड्यूस्ड इन सेंटर ऑल्सो, प्रोविंसेस और सेंटर। फेडरल लिस्ट में आपका डिवाइडेड इनटू द नॉट कम इनटू फोर्स, रिजर्व लिस्ट और ट्रांसफर लिस्ट, दैट इज द रिस्पॉन्सिबल गवर्नमेंट इन प्रोविंसेस। डिसकंटिन्यूड कर दिया गया इसे, गवर्नर के अंडर में था ये रिस्पॉन्सिबल। एक्ट विथ एडवाइस ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स। डिसकंटिन्यूड 1939 में डिसकंटिन्यूड कर दिया गया इसे। सेपरेट इलेक्टोरेट, LDW, लेबर, डिप्रेस्ड क्लासेस एंड वुमेन। voting rights won by this 14%। total pop, establish provincial PSC and the joint PNC, establish किया गया दोनों PSC के लिए अलग अलग, ये 1935 से ही हुआ है। इसके बाद और क्या इस्टेब्लिशमेंट किए गए, इस और एक इस्टेब्लिश किया गया था रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, और एक था फेडरल कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया। फेडरल कोर्ट ऑफ इंडिया भी इसी के सेटअप इन 1937 with original appellate and advisory jurisdiction, functioned until the Supreme Court of India was established in 1950. Federal Court of India 1937 and the Supreme Court of India was established in 1950. These are the some provisions of Government of India Act 1935. Next, August offer. By, why, what and what are the result? By Lord Lytton, वाइसराय था ये। नेक्स्ट आपका वाई, टू गेट सपोर्ट ऑफ कांग्रेस का सपोर्ट फॉर द वर्ल्ड वॉर 2। रामगढ़ सेशन 1940, कांग्रेस मीट passed a resolution offering support in war. In return for, they demanded provincial national government at center responded with, वहां का जो वायसराय था, they responded अगस्त ऑफर. अब देखो, what of the August offer? Rejected, but proposed, वो रिजेक्ट हो गया, but proposed representative constitutional body immediately after war. No number of Indian in Viceroy Executive Council will be increased. War Advisory Council will be set up. Congress and Muslim League reject it. Congress and Muslim League reject it. Next है Cripps proposal 1942. Members, proposals, legacy and why it is failed. Members इसके कौन कौन थे? Headed by the Stafford Cripps, Lord Privy Seal, other member from the State Council, including the leader of House of Commons, ठीक है, including House of People. Proposals, setting up of Indian Dominion Constituent Assembly to frame a new constitution for the country. Indian Dominion, freedom दिया गया Indian Dominion सेटअप करने के लिए. Remains with the British Commonwealth, seceded from the British Commonwealth, take part in international organization. Any province unwilling to join Dominion form a separate union, have a separate constitution. इंडियन डोमिनियन का सेटअप था. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन टू फ्रेम अ न्यू कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन फॉर द कंट्री. उसके जो मेंबर कौन कौन थे? इलेक्टेड बाय द प्रोविंशियल असेंबली, नॉमिनेटेड बाय द प्रिंसली स्टेट. Until this new constitution come into force, Indian defense controlled by the British, power of the Governor General unaltered, transfer of power and rights of minorities safeguarded by the negotiation between the Constitution Assembly and the British government. Legacy, अब हम लोग अगर इसकी legacy में आते हैं तो ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट टेक्नोलॉजी डोमिनियन status for the India first time. Indian could frame their own constitution, freedom to provinces to be a separate union, become a model for the country's partition, in 1947. This is the Cripps proposal. The right to secede from the Commonwealth indicated full sovereignty at the larger stage. In the interim period, Indians were guaranteed a good share in the administration. This is the legacy. And why it is failed? Seemed too radical for British, too conservative by the Indian National Congress, wanted complete independence. Next, rejected by Gandhi. He wanted undivided India. Muslim League did not like the idea of a single union of India. They wanted a separate Pakistan, adequate representation of Muslim in Constituent Assembly, against the procedure to decide the provinces on the province annexation to the Indian Union. This is the Muslim League. इसके बाद rejected by the Congress, demanded full control over defense, against the provinces right to separate form of union, and it was against the national unity, against the Governor General power being retained. No concrete plan for the immediate transfer of power. Next, Sikh, because of non-annexation of provinces, Hindu Mahasabha, and the liberal, against the right of state to secede. Dalit and depressed classes, there was nothing new for them, apprehensive about their status in country where they would be in a minority. Lack of support for it by work behind the state to sabotage the mission. Viceroy Lincoln, British PM Winston Churchill, Secretary of State of India Leo Emery worked behind the stage to support the mission. Lack of support by. This is the August of 1942. Then the Cabinet Mission Plan 1946 come into effect. Composition क्या था इसका? Objective क्या था? It was like a declaration of Indian independence. Proposals क्या था? Reactions क्या थे और उसके result क्या थे? Cabinet Mission Plan. Sir Panthick Lawrence, Secretary of State. Sir Stafford Cripps, President of Board of Trade. Alexander A.V. Alexander, First Lord of the Admiralty. कंपोजिशन यही था. इसके बाद इसकी ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या थी कैबिनेट मिशन प्लान की? क्रिएट ए मेशनरी फॉर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया, मेक अरेंजमेंट फॉर इंटरिम गवर्नमेंट. इट वाज लाइक अ डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस. प्रपोजल क्या था? यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया, अनडिवाइडेड इंडिया, टर्न डाउन मुस्लिम लीग डिमांड फॉर पाकिस्तान, इंटरिम गवर्नमेंट हेडेड बाय जवाहरलाल नेहरू, restricted communal representation, all the member of the interim government would be Indians, minimum interference from the viceroy, union government and legislature would have limited power. ठीक है, limited power, defense, communication, foreign affairs and the finance. Next, interim government headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, provinces will be vested with all subjects except union subject and the residuary power. Next, princely state should retain all subject, all residuary power. Then the Constituent Assembly, President Dr. Rajendra, Chairman Sachidanand Sinha. प्रपोजल था इसका. Based on the democratic principle, first past the post. Democratic principle consists of representative of provincial assemblies and princely state. Each province would be assigned total number of seats in the constituent assembly in proportion to its population. Representation of provincial legislatures was to break up into the three sections. Read more about the constituent assembly. प्रपोजल यही था. अब इसके रिएक्शन थे कुछ. अगर प्रपोजल आएगा तो रिएक्शन भी आएगा. ऑन इंटरिम गवर्नमेंट एंड ऑन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली. इंटरिम गवर्नमेंट के बारे में था. मुस्लिम लीग रिजेक्टेड द आइडिया ऑफ इंटरिम गवर्नमेंट ड्यू टू इनएडिक्वेट रिप्रेजेंटेशन फॉर मुस्लिम्स. कांग्रेस रिजेक्टेड द आइडिया ऑफ वीक सेंटर. कांग्रेस रिजेक्टेड द आइडिया ऑफ डिवीजन ऑफ इंडिया इनटू स्मॉल स्टेट्स. इसलिए ये रिएक्शन था ऑन इंटरिम गवर्नमेंट. ऑन कांग्रेस एंड द ML accepted, member of legislative accepted constitutional. अच्छा. In the cabinet mission plan 1946, इसका रिजल्ट क्या हुआ? Muslim League initially approved the plan, but when Congress declared that it could change the scheme through its majority in representation, Muslim League rejected the plan and called the Muslim to resort to direct action to achieve their dream of Pakistan. August 16, 1946 was declared as the Direct Action Day. Next है Indian Independence Act timeline 1947 फरवरी, जून एंड अगस्त. फरवरी में ब्रिटिश प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो भी थे क्लेमेंट एटली, दे अनाउंस्ड द इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ इंडिया, द इंडिपेंडेंस बाय एंड ऑफ 1948. Muslim demanded partition. देन इन जून 47 लॉर्ड माउंटबेटन का एक प्लान था, पार्टीशन प्लान. ठीक है, एक्सेप्टेड बाय कांग्रेस एंड मुस्लिम लीग. देन इन अगस्त 1947 IIA passed, in India Independence Act passed, and this is Indian independent British rule ends. Then what are the main provisions? प्रोविजन क्या थे इसके? पार्टीशन, वाइसराय, empowered, abolished, established, princely states, government of India Act, right to veto, discontinued, nominal heads. पार्टीशन जो भी था, इसके बाद वाइसराय रिप्लेस्ड बाय माउंटबेटन गवर्नर जनरल फॉर टू डोमिनियन. empowered the constituent assembly adopt any constitution and repeal act of British Parliament. Abolished Secretary of State. Next, established Secretary of State of Commonwealth. Princely states can choose India or Pak or independent. This is the princely state के लिए provision था. Next, Government of India Act 1935 continue till new constitution can be modified. Next, right to veto deprived from crown and given to गवर्नर जनरल. डिसकंटिन्यूड किस चीज को किया गया? अपॉइंटमेंट को, सिविल सर्वेंट के अपॉइंटमेंट को डिसकंटिन्यूड किया गया. नॉमिनल हेड्स गवर्नर जनरल एंड प्रोविंशियल गवर्नर. वर्क ऑन एडवाइस ऑफ काउंसिल्स ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स. In this way, the Indian Independence Act is this Indian Independence Act, Cabinet Mission Plan, Mountbatten Plan, Cripps Proposal, Interim Government. Thank you. Next, we will deal with the different Constituent Assembly.